Hi, boys and girls, it's Miss Bissell. We are continuing today with lesson 2.5. We are going to be using strategies to subtract decimals. And just like our lesson yesterday, we are going to be using what we know about place value and about subtracting whole numbers to subtract decimal numbers. So you will need your book. You will need one sheet of graph paper and a pencil. So if you don't have those materials, go get those, pause the video, we'll wait on you. I am on page 61. So for those of you that are ready, let's start with the solve and share problem. So Miss Garcia is an electrician and she has a length of wire that is 32 and 7/10 meters long. She has another length of wire that is 15 and 33 hundredths meters long. The question is, how much longer is one wire than the other? How much longer is indicative that I'm going to be subtracting in order to find the difference in the two wire lengths. So I have one that's 32 and 7/10 meters long, one that is 15 and 33 hundredths meters long. All I need to do is look at those whole numbers. I know that this one, 32 and 7/10, is the longer of the two wires. The 15 and 33 hundredths is going to be the next one. It's going to be the one we subtract. It is the smaller. All right. When I subtract, just like yesterday, I am going to want to have equivalent decimal for 32 and 7/10 that goes out to the hundredths place. So I'm just going to add a 0 because 70 of the little hundred squares equals 7 of the 1/10 rods. Okay, and we've talked about that with the manipulatives in one of our lessons last week. All right, so once we get the problem set up, we want to go out to the side and get a quick estimate. Let's just round to the nearest, you know what? Let's round to the nearest front digit. So 32 and 70 hundredths, that 2 tells me that the 3 will stay. So we're going to round to 30. 15, the 5 would tell me to round up to 20. So just a quick estimate. And there's many other ways we could estimate, but using front digits, I get an estimate of about 10-meter difference. All right, now let's talk about subtracting. We want to make sure that our decimals are aligned, just like addition, through our minuend, our subtrahend, and now our difference. The answer to a subtraction problem is called the difference. By having the decimal points aligned, we're subtracting ones from ones, tens from tens, tenths from tenths, and hundredths from hundredths. And we created this hundredth by writing the equivalent decimal. Now we're ready to subtract. Just like whole numbers, we start in the smallest place value, we work our way over to the greatest. Sometimes we actually have to rename. So sometimes in this case, we can't subtract 300ths if we don't have any hundredths. So we're going to take one of these tenths and rename it 10 hundredths. All right, and now we can subtract to get a difference of 7 in the hundredths place. 6/10 minus 3/10, we get our 3/10. We're in another position where we can't take 5 ones away from 2 ones. So we're going to take one of these tens. We are going to rename it 10 whole numbers, or 10 ones, excuse me. We already have 2, so that's going to give us 12 ones from which we can subtract 5 to get a difference of 7 ones. 2 tens minus 1 10, I have 1 10 left over. My estimate is about 7, or my estimate of 10 meters is relatively close to my exact answer of 17 and 37 hundredths meters difference of wire. All right, now we have a good question at the end that's really good. How can you use the relationship between addition and subtraction to check your work above? This is all part of a fact family. So if 32 and 70 hundredths minus 15 and 33 hundredths gives us the difference of 17 and 37 hundredths, then we should be able to take the difference, add it to the subtrahend, and it should equal the minuend. So if we take 17 and 37 hundredths, that was our difference, If we add it to 15 and 37, or sorry, 33 hundredths, we get 32 and 70 hundredths. That is what we started with, so we know that that answer is correct. Okay? Now, I'm going to remind you, because I still have boys and girls that are not writing the examples in their books. You're not being the student that you're supposed to be if you don't pause the video when you're working remotely and have the example problems ready. When you sit down and do your practice buddies or whatever other independent practice assignment I give you, these guided practice problems will be very helpful to you. All right, we're going to turn over in our book to page 63. When we get to page 63, we're just focusing today on using place value and what we know about whole number subtraction to be able to subtract decimals. So we're not going to worry about the number lines. We're going to do those next week. So let's get a piece of paper that we talked about having and go ahead and head your paper. Lesson 2-5. You just use L2-5, subtracting decimals. Make sure you put your name and the date, and definitely put what page. We are going to be stapling this into our book, and when we staple, we're going to fold it up. Once we're done, we're going to turn it sideways, and on page 63, we're going to have 2 staples in it, and we will be able to refer back to the example problems. We don't have enough room to subtract right here. All right, so we are going to do a couple practice problems. So I would like to start with number 3. So on your paper, number 3, it's written in sentence form. So the only challenging part that we have is we need to make sure that we are aligning those place values. So let's take our first number, 16 and 82 hundredths. And from that number, we are subtracting 5 and 21 hundredths. So the whole number is 5. It lines up with the 6 ones, 5 ones. And then the 2 tenths lines up with the 8 tenths. And the 100th lines up with the 200ths. All right, before we subtract, just like addition, we go ahead and get a quick estimate. The easiest way for me to do it is, I can either round usually to the front digit. Sometimes I like to round to the nearest whole number. So this one right here, I'm just going to round up to the front digit. 16, the 6 would tell me to round up to 20. 5 and 21 hundredths, the 2 tells me to let it rest at 5. I get a quick difference of 15. So my answer should be somewhere around 15. All right, when I subtract, I'm going to go ahead and bring down my decimal point so my decimals are aligned. 2 hundredths minus 1 hundredth gives me 100. 8 tenths minus 2 tenths, 6 tenths. 6 ones minus 5 ones gives me 1 in the ones place. And this 1 tenth, I don't have anything to subtract from it. So I get a difference of 11 and 61 hundredths. It is relatively close to my estimate of 15, so I feel good about that one. All right, let's take a look at number 4. So again, don't cram your work. Save yourself some space here. Go over a couple of your rows or columns, and let's put number 4 on the same row that we have number 3. And let's take our number 7 and 21 hundredths, and we're going to subtract 6 and 1 tenth. Be careful. We cannot do this. If we line it up like we do whole numbers, we don't have place value positions lined up. You're actually subtracting a tenth from 100th. You're subtracting a whole number from 100th. So be careful. I like to put my decimal point in where it needs to go, aligned. Then I look and I have a 6 in the ones place and a 1 in the tenths place. When I subtract, I notice that I'm going to need to add a 0 and write the equivalent decimal for 6 and 1 tenth. That has 2 decimal places, so that would be 6 and 10 hundredths. I'm going to get a quick estimate out to the side. I'm going to round to the nearest front digit. The 2 in the tenths tells me that I'm going to let it rest at 7. The 1 in the tenth says I'm going to let it rest at 6. I get an estimated difference of 1. I'm ready to subtract. I'm going to bring down the decimal. My hundredths, 1 minus 0 leaves me 100. My tenths, 2 minus 1 gives me 1 tenth. My ones, 7 minus 6 gives me 1. So I have a difference of 1 and 11 hundredths. Very close to my estimate of 1. All right. Let's just jump down and let's do number 6. Let's do a money problem. So we're just going to skip a couple. All right. $4.08. And we're going to subtract $2.12. All right. Money's spoken a little differently. We just read it $4, then we say 8 cents, or we read it $2.12. We don't read it 4 and 800ths, and we don't read it 2 and 1200ths. Let's get an estimate out to the side. $4 will round to $4 because of the 0 in the tenths place. $2 will stay $2 because of the 1 in the tenths place. So my quick estimate is there's a $2 difference. All right, let's see what happens. Bring down that decimal point. 8 minus 2 in the hundredths, we get 600ths. I cannot subtract 1 from 0 tenths, so I'm going to go over to the whole number. I'm going to take 1 and rename it 10 tenths. And I don't have any tenths there, so that's why I have 10 tenths that I can subtract 1 tenth from to get a difference of 9 tenths. 3 minus 2, I get 1. So my answer is $1.96, which is very close to $2. All right. I am thinking that we need to talk about problem number, looking for one that we could talk about. And of course, I don't see it. So I am going to make up a problem. So if you had a problem, let's just put a little star here, a little asterisk. If you had a problem like this, if you had 43 and 9 tenths, and you subtract from it 8, and you're looking for the number. Let's stack it up first. So we would have our 43 and 9 tenths. Now that whole number 8, it needs to have a decimal that we can align. So I want you to think about that. The whole number 8 could be written as 8.0. It could be written as 8.00. It could be written with as many zeros as I need behind a decimal point. But any whole number and every whole number does have a decimal behind it. All right, we just don't see it. It's behind it. All right, it doesn't change the value. So I am going to use 8.0 because I only need one decimal place. Okay, now let's go out to the side and let's round to the nearest front digit. So 43 and 9 tenths, that 3 in the ones place tells me to keep this 40. 8 is already rounded to a whole number, so 40 minus 8, I get a difference of 32 for my estimate. So my actual difference should be close. I'm going to bring down the decimal point. 9 minus 0 is 9. Now, I cannot subtract 8 from 3. I'm going to go next door to the tens. I'm going to make one of the tens 10 ones. I'm going to add it to the 3 ones that are already there. So 13 ones, subtract 8, I get a difference of 5 ones. And 3 minus nothing is 3. So my estimate is very close to my actual difference of 35 and 9 tenths. All right, they're very close. So boys and girls, I've only done a couple examples. So what you are seeing is that this is worked very similar to what we did yesterday with adding these decimals when we have to add zeros to make equivalent decimals so that we can add and subtract. Okay. You see that whole numbers can become decimal numbers by putting a decimal point behind them. Behind them doesn't change the value. In front of them changes the value. All right. So I am thinking I am really not going to spend a whole lot of time on these problems. I'm thinking you've got enough with 4 examples. So you have a practice buddy assignment that you need to complete. Before you move on to that, make sure you have these 4 problems written down. All right, fold your paper up. If you don't have a stapler at home, or you can staple it on page 63 at the top and the bottom, then what you're going to want to do is when you come to school, we need to staple it in. So just leave it here. We've been stapling them in, and we've actually been using this part of our paper to set up our practice buddy problems. Okay, so your practice buddy has you subtracting decimal numbers. Make sure you work out the problems so that you enter the correct answer. All right, so I will see you boys and girls soon. Do your best. Make sure you are getting one dream box completed each day. Make sure you are working on your weekly review. We're on week 15. So those of you that are at home, when you come to school on Monday, November 30th, that's when all fifth graders come back to school. When you guys come back, I'm taking up week 14, last week's, that I would be collecting when I see you this Wednesday. And I'm collecting week 15, which I went ahead and gave you that I would be collecting next Wednesday. So we talked about that before you left last Friday or last Thursday. So make sure you're being responsible, that you're getting your work done. If you've lost your weekly review, you know what? There are copies in the bottom of each week in our math Google Classroom. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.